The journey of being crushed into clarity and humility. Now, one only knows the journey of attaining wisdom. The journey is previously understood as being of a harsh reality. But, as one is coming towards the ending times of it, as the healing begins within the walk, as the pain of not understanding of why matters of living are transpiring, the thoughts and feelings before harsh journey is now clearly perceived as pleasant. The reward of contentment brings the clarity which most find difficult to understand. What the human being has to accept is, the rewards of living does not come without suffering through some degree of pain for the purpose of evolutionary growth upon the spirit and the mind, for the benefit of knowing the fundamentals of being alive. Having to be and therefore becoming from before existing as an entity, into a living organism can only be expounded as a miraculous manifestation, as this is and has forever been a sacred creation, but asserted by religion to be of the origin of the God of the religious world. The connection and disconnection of the human family is one of an individual task, as we all are destined to come to know and understand ourselves, as we struggle to understand one another through times of fear, joy, sorrow and common human relationship. The time of the crushing has forever been committed by the harsh treatment of one to another in this complicated venture of attaining the rewards of contentment within various sections of our internal state. The place inside which is fulfilled of answers giving clarity, and no longer grieving the pains of not understanding of why matters transpire. With time proceeding as it does and must, and of as one is still living within time and its forwards motion, the human being comes to understand that, if one fails to have a clear understanding in the present, then there will be trials coming forth to weather through for the sake of one to understand objectively in the present, what him or her failed to understand clearly of the past. However, fulfillment in terms of coming to know, is the primary recompense for the journey as a whole. Many have come in these times ask, after all of this has been learned, then what else is there in regards to having to know all of these matters conclusively? What now? I have wondered of what else can it be afterwards? What else is it that has to transpire after coming to know this status of perception, and for what reasons are there forthcoming in having the need for having this information individually? One asks of the claimed forthcoming. Is there more suffering to understand and to know? Has certain information been given for the sake of clashing against what information is preconditioned to come? I have come to the conclusion in effects of my observation of human relationship that information has never been a device for the creating a oneness of the human family. Information has forever caused divisiveness. So, one asks, is accumulating all of this information, even individually for the sake of coming to know that information, knowledge itself is futile? Was the universe correct when I died for 8 minutes 2014 when it claimed that, the mind is better at peace when it is void of any knowledge and only knowing nothing, and yet all living things, surpassing mere knowledge? Has the human family been cursed with knowledge? Was the Bible correct of when God told Adam not to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? The knowledge of good and evil is obviously a constitution of information, which has a dual content, which in nature, clashing into one another in terms of perception, as well as one of a contravention possibility, if one does not properly understand all aspects of information which one is trying to express. This explains God's warning of the human being not benefiting from the accumulation of knowledge, as one has to wonder, even with through having accumulated knowledge, of how can this be so? I would have to say unfortunately, just look at the moral condition of our current society and of how further immoral it is becoming. This is through also this system of expression, as well as music and other venues of human utterance. All of which has in time become perverted and therefore exposing and exploitative. So, for what true reasoning is it to have attained all of this knowledge, information of God's, religious and political constitutions, if the earth abroad has not benefited of these areas of instruction? Has education in fact benefited the human mind? Or, has education caused all of what we see this day and all of what we have read through the historical accounts? This is the opening question submitted to you to observe without fear. Is the constitution of the knowledge of good and evil embedded within a time which the Creator morally condemned knowledge, because of its immorality? Where did the knowledge of good and evil come from? Did the knowledge of good and evil come from the Creator whom created all things including information which is itself considered a sphere of knowledge? Sphere of knowledge definition. A unified body or collection of knowledge regarding a specific subject, interest or otherwise area of expertise possessed by an individual. Genesis 2 verse 17. But of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day that thou eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die. In spite of many commonly disagreeing of this claim, this implies a history of where and when knowledge was perceived by the Creator as an abomination to accumulate for humanity and therefore obtain. During this time that knowledge was condemned as abominable, was the population human beings? Or was the population some other formation of living subjects? Was there any formations at all? However, it is not good to assume anything other than what is practical to ourselves, considering the human factor being the reality of that time. However, as according to the Bible, which implies that God has a tolerance and therefore compassion for the presence of evil, when Lucifer, who was succumbed by the spirit of Satan, instead of destroying Lucifer in his rebellion for his transgressions against God, based obviously upon a law that was established in the heavenly plane, the place of where there was supposed to be total order and yet obviously without protection from the acts of rebellion from its population. But he, she or it, was spared and then ousted unto this earthly plane of where we also were created to exist. A place of where the earth supplies food, oxygen and other natural resources which are designed and manifested to preserve all of which has been situate upon it. This is the reality which is evident. As it is evident that the earth was created for the rebellious ones whom were cast out of heaven. As this preservation by God reveals a compassion for Satan and his student Lucifer, this in harmony reveal of God, a tolerance, a compassion and a will of preservation for evil. As many are afraid, or made by religion uncomfortable to question for the sake of investigation. If the knowledge of good and evil is not beneficial for the human family obviously, then where did this information come from? Who created this sphere of information which the divine warned Adam to refrain from in the knowledge according to the Bible? Was there another God present who created this constitution which the divine did not agree with? Before information was released by what Eve committed, through the instinct which she possessed within which was rebellion, Satan had to know that she was made for the purpose of being able to be manipulated by it, and therefore cause also the same rebellion upon earth as was committed in the heavenly plane. As this influence of her made Adam to be manipulated in obtaining this knowledge which caused the death of the current humanity. But, despite her influence upon Adam, Adam was still responsible for making his own conscious decision in going against what God instructed him not to do. Which implies him also having the rebellion implication inside. This is obvious the case. Otherwise, this would not have taken place. As considering the condition of the planet, this has to be valid either of the Bible, the Quran or simple observation from the non-religious community who are still able to see and feel that something formidable transpired that created this complicated stay on this earth despite believing in any organized and established religious doctrine. I would say that all of this was created by the accumulation of information, which the human family has forever used for the sake of war, suffering and death. So, is giving oneself to religious doctrine and therefore information beneficial? The evidence reveals a definable negative. The state of mind that Adam was in according to the Bible was obviously the state which was shown to me when I died. A mind that was empty of any information which reveal my being to be back a part of all living things of clarity beyond limited knowledge and back being a part of being one with all living things and power which is unlimited. As also not having any implication of implementing any personal agenda, because of having no more information to enforce any further chaos upon the earth. His mind was simply designed to obey without question. Questioning implies having knowledge. The moment that Adam gave into Eve's information, he died assuredly. Knowledge opposes truth as what was implied of Yeshua. John 5 verse 30. I can of mine own self do nothing. As I hear, I judge, and my judgment is just, because I seek not mine own will, but the will of the Father which hath sent me. John 12 verse 40. For I have not spoken of myself, but the Father which sent me, he gave me a commandment, what I should say, and what I should speak. The same as Lucifer through Satan sought his own will, the same was Eve in truth in time seeking her own as she removed herself from the presence of Adam. They were compatible and in harmony with rebellion. As this is what we are seeing this day in many women, men, and children. All of which are the results of the accumulation of knowledge that has produced such the condition of the environment through this current government system that is slowly destroying human relationship. Yeshua said that, "He does not speak of myself and thus, he does not speak from the area of any knowledge that he has attained, but, of the Spirit of the Divine, alone." And therefore, the Spirit of truth is in opposition of knowledge, as what was implied when this was said. Genesis 2 verse 17. "But of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day that thou eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die." Was this implying that the information and therefore constitution of information was fruitless, non-beneficial, and non-productive? When observing the condition of the earth, it is clear that the accumulation of information has produced of humanity, a world that is in fact, inhumane in terms of human relationship. Therefore, seeking to find the right information is futile. All matters of living has to be trusted with the spiritual and intellectual instinct of the human being who is humanity. Information has only caused divisiveness. As this is placed before you as a possibility and a reality, consider what you see this day. Is there more suffering to understand and to know? Has certain information been given for the sake of clashing against what information is preconditioned to come? After the organism has finished its course through its accumulation of information according to its design destiny, what purpose is there to further obtain the information that was learned of the flesh if the human being is transformed from the burdens of the organism and into what is asserted as the spiritual state of being? It is a fact that, what the organism has stored in memories, despite its years of existing in function of that information, when the organism dies, the information dies with it. All go back to the earth and its source is never again recorded as valid for the benefit of the human family. But, what is claimed of what the organism has accumulated through religion, is asserted to lead the spirit of the human being to a better place known as the heavenly state of existence. Has this been validated as a fact? Or, has this been left to be believed and thus, not known in truth? What is the meaning of this? There is a state of powerlessness in belief. An incapacity in belief. An option for insecurity and inadequacy inside a belief system. The inability for any human being who has passed on to return to inform the rest of the human family that, the religions which have been given to the earth are in fact valid, reveals that religion and what it contains remains a source of control without validation of what it claims to exist. What is the fact of doctrine is the reality of illusions which religion gives to the human being's intellect, in regards to its assistance of fear and the gift of imagination. The possibility of being punished for the crimes against existing inside a humanity that no one was given a consent to venture in. Never given any insight to why existence is a reality, and of why the human being was considered a participant to play. The contention that the human being is upon what can be compared to being inside of a state which likens of indentured servitude and is serving the earth of what was obviously created for the rebellious, a time to resolve the matters of the heart and mind, without having the option of knowing of how we failed in the previous state of being without having to suffer the crime of what two human beings committed, and yet, this is asserted as a justice and therefore justification of why the human family struggle this moment in time. Genesis 3 verses 17 to 19. And unto Adam he said, Because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife, and hast eaten of the tree, of which I commanded thee, saying, Thou shalt not eat of it, cursed is the ground for thy sake, in sorrow shalt thou eat of it all the days of thy life, thorns also and thistles shall it bring forth to thee, and thou shalt eat the herb of the field. In the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread, till thou return unto the ground, for out of it wast thou taken, for dust thou art, and unto dust shalt thou return. This speaks of mankind being ordained to suffering under a government economic system because of not executing the mind which the Creator gave him, which was to obey according to obedience to his given intelligence, but because of heeding to the mind of a woman who has become one with the intellect of Satan, who heeded to the words of the enemy. This is the reason of why so many families are destroyed through the disobedience of the women inside the family structures of this current society. None of what this scripture is implying is saying that man will be free to till the land without being conquered by a government system. as all of which causes the human family to suffer the physical and stress-related effects of working inside of an economic system, designed and established by government powers, given those powers by the human family which cause this upon themselves and therefore, ourselves even within the constant feelings of inadequacy and the burdens of working inside of a system because of the demands of the flesh to survive. The flesh demands, I am hungry and so you must work to feed me. I thirst and so you must work inside of this current system to quench my thirst, and to give me shelter that I may rest and have security for the next day as I demand that you rise for to get back into the fields that I may continue to live. As it is this day and time in 2022 and venturing into 2023, this is the reality. The burden of living. The burden has been created through mankind's own rebellion against his own mind and heeding to the intellect of the enemy of mankind, rather male or female. Is this why we have been programmed through this living experience to say to the dearly departed, rest in peace, as Dr. Martin Luther King's tombstone reads, free at last, thank God Almighty, I am free at last. Resting in freedom? Resting does not imply a permanent state of peace. It implies a time given for peace and a preconditioned state chaos coming. Let's hope that I am terribly wrong. However, why should we have to hope at all? Has the journey been felt to be one of being enslaved? Many this day are beginning to feel that the state of living in this environment has become such a burden and not a blessing. Many have thoughts of self-termination for to escape the burdens of living. The homeless are beginning to say to the sheltered, I don't have to be concerned of the things you do. The paying rent and the paying for the lights. I have the earth as my shelter, and the sun for my lights that I may be able to see. I have found ways of finding food through many aspects of what many leave behind in the dumpsters of the society of where many fools take advantage of what they have been given, and throw what is still valuable for me to consume for the body in the trash. As this is the reality, despite an agreement or not in terms of its degree or percentage, this reality exists. This can be resolved the moment we understand how vital compassion is and what it will take to heal this earth. The question is, how many of us are willing to admit that our only enemy is not this government system, but the enemy is ourselves, as many are living inside working of this government system which has for centuries enslaved their own brothers and sisters. And what created the necessity for this current government system, the laws and the commandments? Obviously is our rebellion against having the intelligence to execute what is right according to righteousness and intelligence given by the divine, and not what was given to those before us who obviously failed humanity as a whole in effect. Where does this play in the involvement in people who assert that they live for the sake of divinity, who in fact involve themselves inside of a government system, which in fact was ordained to function as a punishment to mankind because of his rebellion against the divine, as the above scripture implies? Is the human being's participation in this government system another form of an abomination against mankind, as Yeshua implied that his kingdom is not of this world based upon principalities? The conformance of the world governments and the non-conformance of the human being to the will of the Creator? The state of our reality has obviously revealed that very little has changed for the better, as many are seeking to be a part of this government system which has opened become a world system now without secret, as it in the same implication, is offering college courses for many of the youth to take classes for their place inside of this Egyptian, Roman government system which is in truth, Babylonian in intent. There is a vicious cycle of immorality which is present. Written by David Anthony Brayboy. true power is not existing within any dual compartments. Not considering yourself strong nor weak, conscious or unconscious gives a humility which is free from the burden of them both. They both possess conflict that gives identity and purpose of their lacking confidence and ability. The acceptance of the simplicity of existing is the ultimate state of being void of the conflict of dual opposites within, causing the turmoil of asserted identity, desired or undesirable effect. If you feel that you have to be plugged into some religion for you to understand of how to treat yourself and therefore other people, then your problem roots more deeper than you realize. Whatever your choice of belief holds no meaning if you do not know of how to treat others because of failing of knowing how to treat yourself. Doctrine was created for you to observe outside of yourself and to rely upon an inaccessible outside agency for your clarity and thus, liberation. Observe yourself. Read and understand yourself of who and what you are, as only then will you understand your purpose and what it means in existence. Searching outside of the soul is the root of self-destruction. The most interesting book you will ever read is, Yourself. Do it. We live in times of where many are seeking various forms of indoctrinations for the sake of feeling enlightened. Many assert to be conscious, spiritual, etc. All of these titles only imply existing inside of a constitution of information in which has a measurement of something which has a beginning and an end. It is revealed to be stagnant in fact because of such. It is easy to determine what you are dealing with when observing these manner of human beings, as you are simply an observer, when most in this mental condition perceive you as one who is challenging them. Since most this day think this to be the case, I found it very easy as well as practical to know if you are in fact dealing with someone who is in fact spiritual or conscious. Both of these claimed states of minds should carry a profound sense of discernment in which is able to determine one very common and uncomplicated reality. If you want to know if you are in fact dealing with a spiritual or conscious human being who are asserted to be blessed with the gift of discernment, simply fabricate something and then wait until they respond. Because they will. You offered for them to execute their vanity and feelings of being neglected of their past, as they now have a strong need to be useful. I find many in this day and time who possess a need to stand outside of themselves, of where they feel uncomfortable as well as discouraged of their own effectiveness, and have difficulty in being within the present sphere of what they possess in terms of knowledge, intelligence, and thus, information to the capacity they have a need to claim to have such an insight into matters of your living experience. They totally are misdiscerning of if you are fabricating what you tell them, and thus they claim to have an insight spiritually into the fabrication as it is being administered. In most cases they truly mean no harm. They simply want to help others to understand their lot more effectively, as they have a great need to be right, to feel more securely. They come from being broken and humiliated in most experiences of their journey and have healed in most areas, but not in the area of having a sense of spiritual and intellectual vanity, with a desire to help others. Sounds complicated? It's only because it is, if commonly feeling and therefore thinking that it should be simple, and if you fail to have an insight into what is transpiring in our society this day. There are a lot of hurt and broken people in the world this day who still desire compassion of themselves for to guide others who are perceived to be lost in complexity. We all are in our own manner walking that path towards what we hope is enlightenment, which in fact is no path at all. I saw in meditation recently, that enlightenment has nothing whatsoever to do with any measure of information, but, of a human being who has the humility to be silent when they know they should. Otherwise, their vanity only invokes them to make guesses in the name of being spiritual or conscious. This is the divine discernment which most who are walking in humility possess. In spite of possessing this vast amount of information, one is awaiting the opportunity to share or even blabber. The most profound state of wisdom and insight will forever be being able to honestly say to yourself, "I don't know," and remain silent. Fabrication is a sacred dilemma which could manifest at any given moment in a discussion because of someone determined to see if you in truth are this divine human being that is propagated. You could expose yourself in trying to assert being something you are not, while the other person who is doing the fabrication seems immensely humble as they look at you and think to themselves. Fabrication has a tendency to reveal the fraudulent ones. It is unfortunate, but a necessity in these times to see what one is faced with. To be rejoined back with all of which holds unlimited power and humility, silence, contentment, no duality, no name or earthly memories. All I can explain it is in one word, and that is, clarity. The knowing of all beyond the limitation of the measure of mere knowledge, as information was no longer a factor and therefore a weighty burden full of conflict. I was free. It takes a while to accept living again after experiencing being absent of the flesh. People are not going to understand you most of the times because your mind has been expanded beyond your formal self to the capacity. You have to get to know yourself again, and also there is a familiar feeling, a presence as well that feels omnipresent. And this is a state of being that is utilized upon a daily basis without effort of expression. You find yourself being forced into a state of isolation because of not being understood. In time, you come to accept that your only real companion is that what you have learned of the experience, and it is that in which is your true lifelong spouse. The time of withdrawing from the common attachments of others fails to be difficult because of being evolved into a mind which holds a clarity surpassing the common reactions, triggering emotions of discord and dismay. You are upon the earth, but no longer as earthbound as before according to what mentality rules the society in all of its platitudes and trends of thinking and responding, reacting and being completely a manifestation of a fictitious state of living that most love and embrace because it permits them to lose themselves and become what is currently and obviously taking the world into a darkness which none will understand its self-destructive formula until it is too late to know that this self-destructive environment was simply brought about by human beings who were taught through various agents of social engineering to reject themselves as they are for the sake of embracing that which only is beneficial to this system. Where much has been gained, plenty will be lost. But it's never too late to turn this thing around. It's up to us. It is clear for most that understand the vitality of objective thinking that, if you are up under a law or commandments based upon moral correction and a maintainer of this moral correction system, and the consequences of opposing those laws despite the trails in your actions, is the death of hell fire, a mythical design dwelling place for you to burn in anguish for the rest of your eternal life, then your submission to fulfilling this law or commandment is truly rooted in fear, and thus, fear is the God that you serve, because fear is the driving force of your submission, not love. It was the disorder in mankind in which created the necessity for the law and the commandments, and therefore, mankind and his disorder gave birth to the commandments that he is under, as this implies him and her already foreknowing what was morally correct. To have to be commanded to perform an act of civility reveals a man or woman whose submission is rooted in a present resistance internally. To have to be commanded implies those who are being commanded still possess some moral resistance in opposition of what the commandment implies, and therefore the resistance keeps the laws and commandments valid. Having to be under a law consistently is no proof of an honest living based upon a fluent moral state consistently, but in fact reveals of one possessing inside a predisposition to commit the acts that those laws and commandment assert to reject and therefore condemn. Considering that we all were created an extension of a dual creator which created both good and evil, both war and peace, male and female, etc. With this practical information and the insight to understand the essentials of this and of how these entities operate, we will in time understand the importance of again utilizing our own authentic instinct which has been contaminated and enslaved by religious doctrine, and ending the fear of again walking free under the sun and being our true selves. The true fulfillment of the law or commandments is no longer having the need to submit to them. You become again a manifestation of unequivocal morality despite being contained within this organism or any organized religion. After it has been fulfilled, then it no longer is a necessity to submit. You are free to be yourself and walking in the light of truth. If you are able to perceive the inner two yin and yang, the duality of the self, then know that you are the third party observing them and seeing that they are in conflict, clashing against one another because of containing opposing perceptions, creating conflict between the two, thus a sense of duality in the human being. They can never coexist in harmony. However, the third party is not able to produce a resolve even though it sees the conflict. So, being able to perceive the third, seeing the dysfunction of the two without a resolution, you are in fact in the fourth insight of where there is clarity. Don't think about it. Allow it to reveal itself. It's clarity. There is a fourth inner eye. Meditation is revealing and healing within one movement. Protect your inner peace. Never sacrifice it back to those who caused you turmoil. Compromising your divine clarity is the death of your contentment and the birth of further turmoil and duality. Be responsible for everything you have, which provides your confidence and strength. No one else will or were created to do that for you. Morality exists within the realm of duality, and therefore, it is left to be asserted as a point of view according to one's life experience in terms of personal perception and its affects upon the mind and spirit. Having this entity contained within with an opposing nature, it can't be an absolute righteous state of morality if it is given a purpose by way of the opposite, which is immorality. Having an opposing partner based upon immoral standards, the assertion of righteous morality leaves to be only a point of view. Then the question arises if morality and immorality have the ability to coexist in harmony while still in their state of opposing implications, creating duality? Then we are left with the yin and yang symbol of conflicting forces, which implies aggression and assertion, clashing against one another, which is mistakenly understood as the balance. Balance is supposed to imply contentment by way of a universal perception. Contentment is free of any conflicting forces within the host. No duality. No opposing state of perceptions asserted as beneficial content for harmony. Being able to go within and having the insight to see the duality implies being of the third party in observing conflicting forces and understanding that there is a war of humanity trying to assert itself as being the ultimate perception of good for the sake of the state of goodness. However, if this can be observed as a third party involved in this observation, then we have more than a third state of insight, but a fourth, written by David Anthony Brayboy.